It's a real pleasure to be able to talk today about the Azure Minerals story that is unfolding at our Andover project. Andover is located in the West Pilbara region of Western Australia, and a photograph here on the first slide shows that it's a very, really good place to be operating on. So we've got rolling hills, not much way in vegetation, lots of outcrops sticking out of the ground, good access in there. You can see a road in the middle background through there. So this is a pretty typical photograph of our Andover project area. Next slide, please. So let's have a quick corporate snapshot. We've got about 390 million shares on issue, and we've got a market cap today around that $640 million, maybe a little bit higher than that. So the company's come a long way in the last 8 months, from a market cap of about 70 million at the beginning of the year to now nearly 10 times that. So there's been certainly a very positive reaction to our lithium discoveries. Cash on hand at the moment is about 18 million in the bank with no debt. So the company's in a very secure place financially. Importantly, in terms of our shareholders, is having SQM as the largest shareholder on our register. SQM is the Chilean company, which is the second largest lithium producer in the world. It's currently building the Mount Holland lithium mine and processing facility and refinery in joint venture with Wesfarmers in southern part of Western Australia. So SQM came on board about 6 months ago and reached out to us. They made an offer to take nearly 20% of the company for a $20 million investment because they really liked what they could see in terms of the lithium potential on the Andover project. So that was a huge endorsement for the project at a very early stage when we actually didn't have any drill holes into the pegmatites which host the lithium. And since then, obviously, their foresight has proven to be very accurate, and we've come a very long way. The Andover project is a joint venture. It's 60% owned by Azure and 40% owned by the legendary prospector Mark Creasy and his group. So that 60-40 joint venture is the dynamic that we are going forward with, because Creasy's 40% is free carried through to the decision to mine. Next slide, please. So we're talking about lithium, and that's what we are here today about. So move on to the next slide, please. The location of the project. You couldn't get a better located project. I know Dean was talking about driving 14 or 15 hours to come back from his project up there in the middle of the back of Beyond. Whereas here for Azure, we fly from Perth to Karratha. That's a 2-hour plane flight. And then there's a half an hour's drive along the Northwest Coastal Highway, which takes us through the town of Roebourne and then into the northern part of the project area. From there, we've got a lot of roads and tracks that spread out throughout the project area. So access into Andover is really good. And then we look at the other infrastructure facilities that are in the area. So we've got a potable water pipeline that crosses the project area. We've got a high voltage power line. We've got a gas pipeline, all of which are available for commercial third-party use. And in addition to that, you've got the Port of Dampier, which is located just on the left-hand side of that aerial photograph. It's a commercial multi-user port available for import and export of cargoes. To the south of us, off the screen, you've got Rio Tinto's iron ore mining operations. There's one of their railway lines that runs up our western side of our tenement up to the Cape Lambert for the exporting of their iron ore. And offshore, you've got Chevron and Woodside's oil and gas production facilities, and then their LNG processing facilities are onshore on the Burrup Peninsula. So this is a really infrastructure-rich area. It's heavily industrialised. And yet we have a 108 square kilometre mining tenement there, upon which we're finding abundant amounts of lithium. So you could not get a better located project for both exploration and for mining. Next slide, please. So we zoom in on the project area. Andover's made up of 3 exploration licenses, which are shown outlined in blue there. We've got the town of Roebourne a couple of kilometres to the north of the project area. Then you can see the Northwest Coastal Highway going through the northeastern part of the tenement. The red shapes that you can see on this image are the outcropping pegmatites that we've mapped and sampled. And you can see there's hundreds and hundreds of them actually outcropping. Individually, there's over 700. A lot of those do join up together. What we're finding in the area is that there is abundant outcrop. And so identifying these outcropping pegmatites has been relatively straightforward. Have the next slide, please. So we're looking at an area here contains the pegmatite swarm of about 9 kilometres in an east-west direction by up to 5 kilometres in a north-south direction on the eastern side. Those pegmatites in there individually can be up to 2 kilometres long, maybe up to 100 to 200 metres wide at surface. And the surface sampling that we carried out in that area over most of last year, in the early part of this year, with over 1,000 rock chip samples collected, showed evidence of widespread high-grade lithium mineralisation that was contained within these outcropping pegmatites. And in those outcrops, you can see abundant spodumene mineral, and spodumene is the preferred lithium mineral for extraction and processing. Some of the very high-grade samples you can see on the left-hand side there were over 35 samples were over 4%. A large number of 2, 3, 4, up to 5% lithium grades in outcrops. So it's one of the highest grade, if not the highest grade, lithium outcrops that has been discovered in Western Australia. Next slide, please. So the area where we're currently drilling is called Designated Target Area 1. There's a number of pegmatites in there, 4 or 5 of them that we're currently drilling. The reason we started drilling in this particular location is because that was the only area in which we had environmental and heritage approval in place, in which we were able to go and access with drill rigs to go and drill test those pegmatites. We did have all of our heritage and environmental approvals in place for the western side, the left-hand side of the project area. That's where we were previously exploring for our nickel and copper sulfide mineralisation. But the eastern area was a new area, so we needed to get those environmental and heritage approvals in place. The first of those is in that target area number 1, and that's where we're currently drilling. Next slide, please. So we zoom in on this target area number 1, multiple pegmatites sitting in there. The bright red zones are the outcropping pegmatites, which stand boldly out of the surrounding host rocks, which are usually mafic or ultramafics. And then surrounding those, you've got that paler red shaded, which shows evidence of the continuity of the mineralisation. And that continuity is both demonstrated from the surface mapping and sampling, where we can see minor outcrop and subcrop there of the pegmatites, and also the drill holes that we've put into there show evidence of that continuity of the mineralisation, both along strike from southwest to northeast, but also up and down dip as well. The blue lines that you can see on there are the drill holes that we've completed, the diamond drill holes that we've completed to date. We've drilled about 30 holes into this particular area for about 10,000 metres. We probably have another 10 to 15 diamond drill holes to go just into this area alone. And we've also commenced a reverse circulation program a couple of months ago. So that's underway. Over 20 holes have been completed to date out of a total of 100 that we've got planned in this area. You can see that the fence lines, the drill lines that we put in there are about 200 metres apart with 50 metre spaced holes along those lines. The intention is to be able to drill this area out to a JORC resource status, which should be available or completed by the first quarter of next year. What we've seen with the continuous pegmatites here is strike lengths in excess of 1 kilometre long, confirmed by drilling, in an area where the outcrop evidence is over 2.2 kilometres in strike. So there's significant lateral continuity here, and the pegmatites are stacked one on top of each other, dipping towards the northwest, and true widths of the pegmatites in a lot of places are well over 100 metres. And within that, we are getting true widths of lithium mineralisation up to about 100 metres as well. We'll have the next slide, please. And some of the drill holes results we're getting back are just, as it says there, quite exceptional. We're getting very broad widths of mineralisation, in some holes up to 100 metres wide, nearly true widths as well, of very high grades of lithium. And there's abundant intersections where we've got 40, 50, 60 metre wide zones of mineralisation. So this is some of the widest or broadest mineralised zones of mineralisation that have been identified in Western Australia, certainly in early stages of previous other companies' lithium exploration. And also what we're seeing in there are some very high grades as well. So for example, that hole 208, where we got 22 metres at 3.5% lithium, that is one of the best, highest grade lithium intersections that I know of in Western Australia. So the diamond drilling is continuing, and there will be more results coming out very shortly from the results that are coming in now. The RC drilling is continuing as well, so there'll be a lot of information being released about those results as well. We'll have the next slide, please. When you're looking at the drill core, what's really important that we have determined is that we can identify the spodumene visually. Now, the spodumene in these photographs are the pale grey to white crystals that you can see in those 4 pieces of drill core. And that's fairly typical of the very high grade mineralization that we see in the drill core. So you're getting 3 to 4 up to 5% lithium in these samples. And the background host rock is grey quartz. So where we see the high grade mineralization, it's usually just spodumene and grey quartz. And then as the grades get lower, you have other minerals that come in like feldspars, etc. What is very important for us is that we're able to identify the amount or an estimated volume of spodumene within that drill core. And that gives us a very strong indication of what the grades are likely to be in those pieces, those drill core and that drill holes. And from there on, we can actually plan and execute our drilling program 2 to 3 weeks in advance of receiving the assays back with confidence that we're actually continuing to hit mineralization with the drilling. We'll have the next slide, please. So where to from here? Well, one of the most important items that we need to address at all times is both the heritage and also the environmental side of things. We're in an area which has cultural significance to the local traditional owners, so we need to be very careful of how we operate there. So we can't just go out and drill holes. We need to undertake heritage surveys and have clearances put in place so that we can actually go out there and drill. So the 2 areas where we've currently just completed heritage surveys are shown there as those white boxes, target areas number 2 and 3. Both of them have at least 3 or 4 large pegmatites in there, which extend over kilometres in strike length and up to 100 to 200 metres wide at surface. And they also contain or have returned very high grades of lithium from the surface rock chip sampling in the order of 3 to up to 5% lithium. So both areas, target area 2 and target area 3, are the new areas which we'll be starting our drilling on in the very near future. As I said, we have completed our heritage surveys in them. We are just awaiting final clearances to be able to put the rigs into those areas. So those areas, together with the target area currently drilling in target area 1, the targets that will make up the targets for our mineral resource estimate, which is expected in the first quarter of next year. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so where to from here for the rest of this year? Well, we are probably 30,000 metres into a 100,000 metre drilling program. We started the diamond drilling back in March with 2 rigs, and then we had 2 RC rigs moved to site in May. We've got another RC rig drilling there now, and a 3rd diamond drill rig is on its way as well. This is one of the largest drilling programs that's been undertaken for lithium in Western Australia that I'm aware of. And we're only undertaking that because we have the utmost confidence that we will be able to identify a lithium resource there that will be of world-class scale. We intend to be able to put out an exploration target in the current quarter, once we have a little bit more information back from both the drilling and from the assaying. And the mineral resource estimate, the maiden resource estimate, will be published in the first quarter of next year. At least that is our objective. We also have quite a few other pegmatite targets which have yet to be tested. There's another 17 on the project area where we have really good outcrop with containing significant amounts of spodumene and also returning high grades of lithium from that sampling. So there's a lot more areas yet to go and drill. We've also started some of the component studies of what will be the initial scoping study for the maiden mineral resource estimate out next year. So metallurgical test work is currently in progress. Heritage surveys are always ongoing. Environmental baseline studies are continuing as well. They've been underway for the last couple of years. We commenced those as part of the nickel exploration project 2 years ago. So those environmental baseline studies are going through their final year. And also we've got some new licenses we've applied for to search for groundwater, and hydrological studies will be taking place as well. So the intention there is that we want to be able to, as part of the exploration target, identify that the project does hold potential for hosting over 100 million tonnes of lithium resources. And if it does prove to be true that that project does contain that sort of resource, then this will put it into the top 10 in the world and potentially much higher up the ladder than that. Have the next slide, please. So that's the Azure Minerals story and the Andover project. It's certainly proven to be highly exciting. First, with 2 nickel sulfide deposits discovered, which we've not really talked about today at all, and also now the lithium that we're drilling out, which looks like it could be a lithium project of world class and world scale. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Great presentation, and clearly a project that has captured the market's attention. And looking at the number of questions that we've received, certainly a company that is on a lot of watch lists, and that's to be expected given the scale and opportunity associated with the lithium asset. I just want to go back a little bit in time. So Mark Creasy, probably for those who know of Mark, is probably one of the most well-credentialed exploration geologist going around, and a famous pegger of projects and a deliverer of projects. How hard was it to prize this project off, Mark? And now, how active?
It wasn't very difficult.
Interested.
Go on.
Sorry, and how interested is he in the exploration work being undertaken?
All right. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, got you.
Okay, sorry, I got the first part of your question. In terms of pricing this project from Mark Creasy, it wasn't actually very difficult because our previous existence of exploring in Mexico. We came back to Western Australia. This is in early 2020. I approached Mark to see if he had any projects that he would consider vending into Azure, and he straight away said, yes, I have a really great nickel project called Andover, located in the Pilbara. So we actually entered this project on the basis of the nickel potential, and we successfully found 2 nickel deposits. But who would have known that also on the project area, we had hundreds and hundreds of outcropping lithium-rich pegmatites.
And the second part of the question is, how active is he, given he's a rock kicker? He's a genuine rock kicker, and he loves kicking rocks and finding projects and developing projects. How active is he, or interested is he in the work that's being done from an exploration point of view?
He's not active in any way now, but he's certainly very interested, and we keep him well informed about what's going on. You're right, he's an explorer at heart. He loves making discoveries or being involved when discoveries are made. So we make sure that we keep him well informed about what's going on, and he's excited just as we are.
SQM, you touched on them, clearly one of the biggest lithium companies globally. How were you able to attract them at such an early stage into this project? Did they see the potential that you saw that early?
They approached us on the back of the initial rock chip samples. We didn't reach out to them. They called me on the morning of putting out a press release saying that we had some rock chip samples with some lithium grades above 1% in it. So then they asked for if they could have a look at the data and have a look at the project, and we signed a confidentiality agreement. They came to site with 2 of our geologists, and they hired a helicopter fly around for a day. And they came back, and within a week, they'd put a proposition to us that they would like to take a share of the company in order to gain exposure to the project. And they obviously saw something at Andover that they really liked, and now we understand why.
In terms of funding, a very, very aggressive program. What's the funds look like, and how far do they last in terms of exploration spending?
Yeah, we've got about $18 million in the bank at the moment, and we're currently spending $3 to $4 million a month. So, you can work the maths out on that. So there will come a time sometime in the next few months where we'll need to go back to the market and raise some funding. But at the moment, we are well cashed up. We are drilling with multiple drill rigs. We're returning some amazing results, and that we expect those amazing results to continue out into the future. So we would like to see the project develop just a little bit further before we go back to the market.
A great question here. You touched on the fact that the first area you drilled was really the only area you could drill, and you know, because of a number of reasons in relation to access, and now you're gaining greater access. In hindsight, was it your preferred drill location, or now that you look at the total project area, are there other spots that are more exciting?
There were a couple of other areas that initially were higher priority for us, but we were unable to gain access to them at that point in time. So we ended up going into what we call target area 1, or where the AP 10, 11, 12 pegmatites outcrop. That was back then, but now where we're drilling currently, it's an absolute cracker, and it should have been right at the top of the table along with the other ones that we identified. But the two new areas that we've got, we've just completed the heritage clearance surveys on, and we hope to be drilling in those in the next few weeks. Those two are really high priority as well, because there's a large amount of pegmatites outcropping and contain spodumene at surface, returning high grades of lithium. So it's quite likely or possible that when we go and drill in those two new areas, we'll find similar volumes of mineralisation as we're currently doing.
Now, management and boards don't like talking themselves up too much. And certainly in your case, in the Azure case, you're a pragmatic and conservative board, and albeit have big smiles on your face whenever we talk about exploration and results. The team itself has strong capacity in building projects, and in particular, you've developed and built projects historically, so you know what needs to be done.
Well, that's true. Yes, we have people on the board who are either personally or represent other major shareholders who have good experience in terms of discovery, development, building projects. And yes, I was involved with something similar back in the early days with Jubilee Mines when we developed the Cosmos nickel mine. And I would say that with our nickel deposits that we've got at Andover, they would be a joy to actually develop those ones. The lithium is proving to be something that is several orders of magnitude much larger. So that's going to be an interesting conundrum when it comes to the development and further development of that particular side of the Andover project.
Tony, a cracking story, clearly on a lot of watch lists, looking at the number of questions and comments coming through. A number of them are just purely congratulatory and wishing the company and yourself all the best going forward. So take those while you can and when you can. Appreciate the opportunity to hear the Azure story. Tony, we will follow with interest. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure.